good afternoon once again. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, good afternoon. So much better when I get a response for that. Okay, so Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis player, said, "Trust has to be earned and should only come after a passage of time." However, all the tech revolution tools like the Internet of Things, AI, blockchain, and quantum have changed the way we work, socialize, and do business. As we've now entered a new era, business leaders are in a dilemma. This session will address some of these concerns and will have leaders give their perspective on ways to cover this trust gap. And who better than to moderate this next session? Govindraj Ethiraj, founder, Boom FactCheck, and Ping Network. I'm going to invite him on stage. Please put your hands together. Joining him are our panelists. Stuart, head of technology, Fidelity. He has a golf handicap of 6. He has 2 boys aged 11 and 13, and they play Monopoly quite competitively. And he enjoys runs in the morning. Along with them, we have Ashwin Yardi. You've met him the last couple of days. CEO India, Capgemini Technology Services. And he has worked in 5 continents in the world. He's an avid sports person and plays badminton, cricket, tennis, volleyball, squash, and a few other things. And he's spent 23 years of his career in one company, Capgemini. So huge round of applause for that. Harsha Agadi, CEO Crawford and Company. He believes in arranged marriages. He does not believe in social media. And he runs an engineering college in India, sitting there in the US, which is deep in rural India. And apparently, it's a college that runs without this format of donations in engineering colleges. And most of the students there are women. So, to tell you a little bit about our moderator, he's an aviation geek, he's a financial journalist, and is now learning the ropes of technology. And of course, he's busting fake news and seeing how technology can help in busting fake news, one fake story at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, this Power Pack panel coming to you. Please put your hands together for all of them. Govind, stage is all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much to NASScom for inviting me. We're talking about trust, and I think the first question is, why are we talking about it? What's fundamentally changed in recent years that trust has even become an issue that needs to be discussed in the manner that we're discussing it? And I'm sure all of you in your organizations, companies, enterprises are facing it, even whether you're a consumer-facing or a business-facing or even within your business. So that's the fundamental issue that we want to try and draw today. We're going to talk about 3 or 4 more issues which are related to it and hopefully emerge with something concrete at the end of it. The second is, how is this affecting us? If there is a lack of trust, there's no 2 ways about that. I, as a media person, face it all the time. I was at a discussion just 2 days ago where I asked a group of about 300 people, how many of you trust media? And 3 people put up their hands. So I said, which means that effectively you don't trust what I'm saying or what I'm doing here. But anyway, that's a different issue. The second question is that if people don't trust, and this trust deficit is only growing as technology is and distribution is, then what are the solutions? The solutions are really 2 types. There are the people solutions and there's a technology solution. So what do our panelists think about that? And what is going to move faster and what's going to start playing out more effectively than before? The next part is that if and as companies and organizations or individuals start responding to this trust deficit, what is it going to take? In their own boardrooms, in their own leadership, and are they ready for it? Have they even recognized what the problem is, and to what extent it's perhaps has a grip on our businesses or our lives today, as perhaps you've not anticipated or expected to do it. So these are the 3 or 4 points or themes that we're going to cover in our discussion today. And what we're going to do first is, I'm going to ask each of our speakers to speak for about 5 minutes. They've got some very interesting slides, which I think will lay out the foundation of this discussion or give you a landscape vision quite clearly, and use that to have a short conversation, hopefully after which I will be able to take in some comments or questions from all of you, all of that in 40 minutes, which is very tough, given that I'm a television guy, but nevertheless used to spending 20 minutes maybe talking myself. So let's begin with Ashwin. Do you want to go first? And 5 minutes, talk to us about why we are talking about trust today, how this matters to you as a company, as an individual who's leading a company, and why we should be doing something about it and what we could be doing about it.
Okay, thanks. Can I have the slides, please? Can we have the slides, please? Okay. When we talk about trust, I think probably most of you would have read about something called as Edelman PR report. This is a company which has been doing research for last almost 20 years. And if you look at the data behind it, over the years, the trust quotient coming out of their surveys has been decreasing. And good you brought out, Govind. They look at 4 constituents: NGOs, governments, media, and business. And 2 of the constituents which come regularly lower and now probably are on the lowest is government and media. Okay. But what forms a trust and what's the sort of constituent of a trust? People trust either you have the competence. So 1/4 of the quotient of trust comes from competence, and 3/4 of the quotient comes from ethical behavior of a company. So that's what Edelman has been saying, and the key point is, over last few years, it's been going down and down. So that clearly shows we do have a challenge on trust. Now, this is not limited to IT, as in we'll talk a bit more about digital in a bit, but it's not limited to IT. We see, of course, IT, what happened with Cambridge Analytica, Facebook is probably famous around it, but it also happened across all industries. So you look at, everybody probably is aware of Dieselgate, what happened there. Everybody is aware about the Me Too environment. So it's, I think, of course, tech has much bigger implication, but I just want to call out that the trust issue today is not limited to IT or digital. It's quite pervasive, and it's something which is very important for all who are in the room to address. So what do we believe, right? We start with a sort of a premise these days that we trust no one. Okay. Now I want to ask all of you a question. How many of you trust the person sitting next to you? Quite a few hands up. Quite a few hands. How many of you would trust to pay them a few million to keep it safe? Much fewer hands, I can say. And that's the important part about trust. That's the important part about trust. That's the important part about trust. We normally have a paradigm which is trust or distrust. But the reality is not trust or distrust. The reality is a bit different. The reality is actually part of an x-axis or a y-axis. So at any given point of time, you are trusting somebody, and at the same time, you're distrusting somebody. And you would be surprised, the neuroscience studies tell us that there are different parts of a brain which process these 2 emotions simultaneously. So trust is processed by amygdala, distrust is processed by neocortex. If anybody in the room who's with a biology or science background. So that's interesting. And just to illustrate the point, I would trust, and we have a banker or a financial industry person in our forum. You trust a banker to keep the money, most likely, but probably you would not trust the same investment banker to give you an investment advice. So to illustrate, again, you would probably trust people at the same time, distrust at the same time. So that's a unique paradigm that it's not binary about being trustworthy or distrustworthy. So this is a very interesting picture. We talk a lot, and again, we'll talk a lot about digital and trust in digital. But what this real picture depicts is Airbnb. Now, we don't trust a lot of people. As I said, we start with a paradigm saying trust no one. But take an example of Airbnb, or so be it an Uber. What's happening here? Just on certain likes, dislikes, or comments on an internet, you are making a decision to go to a foreign country at a time and be a guest of a host who you don't know, you've never seen. And likewise, the same host is taking a bet and trusting you with the keys of his or her house. So that's very interesting. We trust no one, but we trust a few likes, or we trust a few comments. So that's the context of today's digital era trust. And I just want to set the context for further discussion. So in today's world of trust, you're actually looking at three different ways of it, or there's an underlying technology or platforms behind it. Number one, it's the classical, centralized, brand-driven trust, what typically organizations have been doing. The second part of it is the Airbnb example, which is very network-driven, ratings-driven type of trust. Very fast, but decentralized. And then the third, which probably is a solution to a lot of our trust challenges, is trust at a protocol. And the underlying theme behind it, what we call as hyperledger or blockchain. Very decentralized, distributed, but you trust it. And you would see a lot more solutions in the trust space coming from blockchain. So that's the context I wanted to set. To your question, Govind, as in I take a lot of pride that 50 years, or now it's 52 years ago when Capgemini was founded, our founder, Serge Kampf, had 7 values. So if some of you would have joined us for the GLA event yesterday, you would have seen those. But 52 years ago, one of the values our founder created was trust. So you have 7 values. By the way, fun is one of them, but trust is one of them. And we take it very seriously. And the 3 parts of trust always are, and we should develop over for a subsequent section, is it's accountability. So you have to be accountable to people whose trust you are interested with. It's transparency, and it's sovereignty. So I'll talk about it a bit more later, but so that's the context.
Okay, thank you. Stuart?
Thank you. Got the slides. So, going to build on Ashwin's comments when the slides hopefully come up, as they're coming up. So Fidelity International, the company I work for, is in 25 countries. It's a $500 billion plus company. We feel we have a really strong level of trust with our customers, but actually it may not be enough in this day and age. In a fast-changing world that's overrun with deepfake technology, data breaches, and the amount of data that we're seeing, in actual fact, we need to do an awful lot more. And you can see from this slide, the sheer amount of data that we are seeing day in, day out is growing all the time. In fact, each of us receives 5 times more data than we used to 30 years ago. And people's trust in that data is interesting because actually the issue is not about the quantity of data that we're seeing, it's actually about the quality of the data and who you can trust. And 69% of people have said that they actually have less trust in what they see online than they did 10 years ago. Now this is particularly important for financial service institutions when the difference between your digital interactions and your personal interactions are changing. So the number of physical branch visits, for example, have gone down by 45%. And if you look at our most frequently used communications, such as SMS, email, text, mobile apps, they lack the eye-to-eye contact or the physical human body language that typically we've used to build human trust. So those are some of the dynamics that are working against us as we're trying to build trust. So really, The problem is, it's not what you trust, it's who you trust. So as we begin to extend our personal lives into digital identities online, the dynamics are changing. Now, there was a British anthropologist in the 90s who proposed that actually the number of people that you can form a trusted relationship with is around 150 people. And we're actually way beyond that now. Now, I thought I was going to win in this competition about Facebook because I'm a bit of an anti-social media user. I had 18 friends. You beat me, Harsha, actually. The average number of friends on Facebook is about 338. The number of connections in LinkedIn is 400. So actually, our digital footprint is huge. But actually, what we find is that every time that is compromised, every time there's a data breach, every time somebody assumes somebody's personality online, that trust in those organizations and companies is diminished. So we're building a trust deficit as we go. And what we'll find, I think, over the next sort of 5-10 years, is just one of society's biggest challenges is how do we rebuild that trust deficit in a digital age where actually face-to-face communications and physical interactions are declining. I'm going to skip that slide. So what does it mean for Fidelity, a financial services company? Well, we really focus on putting the customer first and put the customer at the heart of what we do, and really it's our purpose. So we're there to build our clients' trust. Now, purpose has to have a means. So if we put the client first and we do the right thing by the customer, then we will have a more sustainable business and we start to give back to society rather than focus on profits. So profits are actually an outcome. Our goal is around financial well-being of individuals and making sure that we increase their financial well-being and reach their financial goals. And we do that by being very transparent about the data strategy. So we explain what data we're capturing, and we explain how we use the data, not for our own purposes for profit, but to meet the purpose and the financial wellness of the customer. So we do have traditional trust methods, which are very face-to-face and very much more with human interaction. But also we're looking at future trust models, including digitized trust via technology. As Ashwin was saying, this is an evolving area. And one area where we have focused on is, can we use our trust and brand to store digital assets, for example? Now, if you have a digital asset, you need to be very, very careful who you trust to keep the key for that digital asset, because if you lose that key for your digital asset, it's gone forever. So using that trust and that brand that we're building with our customers and the relationship, and always putting the customer first, should lead to a more sustainable business. More sustainable business will lead to profits, but there's the customer that's the goal and the outcome. And I think really that's the sense for capitalism, is how do we create a sustainable society that actually gives back as much as it takes.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart. I think you have to fix your mic, and you have a few minutes to do that. Harsha, I know that you wanted me to ask you that the starting point of your next 5-minute talk is going to be that you do not trust anybody.
Actually, I trust a lot of people. I don't trust social media. I have no LinkedIn, no Facebook, no Instagram. I don't know what else is out there. Twitter, I just recently discovered today. I have none of it. I lead a charmed life. I have no breaches, no risk. And I run the largest insurance claims management company in the world. We are one of the oldest listed on the New York Stock Exchange, Crawford and Company. We processed $14 billion of claims value. We have health records and property records of probably half the humanity or more on this planet. We have 700 offices. The closer you are to Beijing, the tighter your security needs to get. It's a very simple philosophy. You can applaud, it's okay. Equifax had the breach. and the Chinese military was behind it. That is a fact now. Huawei can breach into many of the networks that exist. Trust is binary. I might disagree with you. Either you have it or you do not. Computers were created on the binary code. What a coincidence. The elements of trust are very simple. Privacy, security, reliability, ethics, and compliance. These are the pillars of trust. We have thousands of employees around the world. We run a pulse survey every 6 months like clockwork. Everybody responds. We have a very high response rate. Nobody, including myself as the CEO, gets any individual piece of data of how an employee feels. We can only look at group data. The Italians are a lot happier than the Brits. Finance is, as usual, more boring than sales. But this kind of data we look at as senior management as we proceed forward. And in the old days, communism controlled a lot of the world. Then it was capitalism. Today it's Modi's government, Trump's government, I can go on and on. The problem we have is that centralized forces are taking over our information, namely Facebook, Google, Yahoo, I can go on and on. And you did not vote for this. They are in our lives today, and they have tremendous power they're wielding. My wife is sitting opposite me just to make sure I'm not jet lagging today, by the way. We just came in from Atlanta, and I'm wide awake with the spotlight and my wife in front of me. And I have every app turned off on my phone, which irritates my wife, because anytime I need to do something, I got to turn it on, I got to use the app, and in the next 5 minutes, I turn it off. And the reason is, and I got privacy on my phone as well, the reason is I do not want to be tracked. You as a human being is sacred to you. And you cannot allow that. So we're in the age, I am truly convinced, of a tremendous amount of mistrust, and we need to get very careful and, in fact, tell our kids, who are very open and transparent, that data is being tracked. If we're recruiting somebody today, it's very easy for me to get their personality profile anywhere on the system. I'm not a very good surfer, but there are a few people in my company who can get that data pretty quickly. But that kind of information exists, and you get compromised on a regular basis. I think I'm going to stop right here, Govind.
Right, so let's get a couple of questions in. So the first is, I think we've addressed the issue and outlined it in a conceptual sense. How is this really affecting you today? The distrust that we are talking about, and let's get both of you in, Ashwin and Harsha. How is it? What's the impact? Where the rubber meets the road?
So I would address it in two ways. First, what we need to address or solve it, but before that, I'll give some examples of how it impacts business, okay, and just some statistics. So as we all know, GDPR was launched a few years ago. It's been deployed. Some statistics tell us that 84% of the companies who have deployed GDPR successfully are trusted more. Okay. The second statistic is, in the same sample, we saw that big gap of almost 20% of companies which had deployed GDPR successfully, they had 20% more benefit on their internet traffic and their online commerce. So clearly, any company which is ensuring that the data is protected, the trust is retained, has a clear business success. So what we do is, for ourselves.
So let me ask you, so the response, I'll come to the response in a moment, but how is it affecting you? Where do you really feel the lack of trust either affecting business or your B2B relationships?
So for us, as I said, from our context, when we build our solutions, when we work with our clients, and frankly for us, it's probably what Harsha said. Today we are 115,000 employees in India. We have to ensure that we take care of our employees' data in what we do with them. So we follow a few things. We follow that when we get their data, we have a clear transparency of what data we are using. In fact, some parts of, it's not relevant in India, but some part of Capgemini organization, we don't even share their skills, their demographics, even for our core operations. For us, knowing skills is extremely important if I want to deploy them.
Okay. Yeah, Harsha?
So a couple of things are how it affects business. I've been a CEO, I think, for about 23 years. I never had the chief security officer of my company reporting to me directly. So today, I have to spend as much time as looking at the balance sheet, to the strategy of the company, to actually assessing how tight our security systems are, because it is continuously dynamic in terms of what's happening in the world. That's the first. The second, let's say I have 100 rupees or $100 in revenue. I might have been spending 10 years ago maybe 1 rupee or $1 on security protection. Today, I might have to spend $5 or $7 or 5 and 7 rupees on security, so the cost of security is jumping up. Third, I have a lot of data, over 6,000 clients. I don't sleep well at night because the only thing fearful for me is not the street anymore, it is breach of data. And the breach could be employees, the breach could be on clients. I send a simple email to my head of payroll at the end of the year. Can you give me a summary of what I got paid during the year? Guess what he does? He gets up from his office. He comes all the way to my office. I might be busy. He'll wait an hour if necessary. He'll come up to me and say, I just want to make sure you sent that email. He's not willing to release my information to me because he is that paranoid. Welcome to today's world of mistrust. And it's expensive.
Exactly, yeah. So, and this is obviously adding to the cost of doing business.
Correct.
It's adding layers of complexity. So
Right.
what does this mean? I mean, how for the clients that you work with, and you're trying to process, I'm sure, faster, and in a growing environment of mistrust, how do you manage the two?
As an example, our mission statement is restoring and enhancing lives, businesses, and communities. And if there is a medical claim or there is a property claim, instead of something like that finishing in a day or an hour or a week, all of a sudden it might take a month because you have to go through more hoops just to get that done. And by the way, GDPR, the nations that signed up for GDPR are also the same nations that are signing up for Huawei. I find that very interesting, actually. So they close one door as the other door opens widely. Just think about it for a minute. So to me, the cost, the lack of speed, is really impacting people's lives. It really is.
Do you ever take a step back and think about this? I mean, and why is this happening? I mean, I know the structural reasons for it, right? There's so much more data flowing out, and as the flow of data is increased, the possibility or the potential of distrust is also increased because you're handing over data to people you don't know, and increasingly so. So that's the physical part of it. But do you think there's something about psychology, there's something about the way...
No question. There is a great amount of uneasiness. And the uneasiness goes right into the boardroom. Today, if there is a breach, the board of directors have liability on the breach. If the minutes and the agenda of a board meeting does not reflect adequate time is spent on the assessment of security, the liability is total. As my chairman said to me one day, I don't think it would be a pleasant moment for you and I to go together to sit in front of Congress to explain why the breach happened. That is the first time it occurred to me, you better not be chairman and CEO. There is some double risk there, and you need to be very careful so you can share the risk. But I really believe that we have financial audits, right? PwC, EY, KPMG, Deloitte. They've neatly divided the world up. Very kind people. Now, the interesting thing is, there is no trust audit. And by the way, you can't trust the government, nor can you trust the private enterprise. So to me, you need to come out with a body of individuals that only stay on that body for a limited time, but a trust audit and a trust certification has to happen for every single company, confirming executives are not using employee data in the wrong manner, confirming there is enough security measures, but this needs to be in place, a trust audit. We have financial audits, we have CSR. Notice we don't have a trust audit, and I'd begin the trust audit with the social media companies. That might be the starting point. And by the way, they are disqualified to be involved in trust audits.
Okay. Yes, Stuart.
Yeah, I was just going to add in terms of the trust piece, because it's really interesting. Trust is a feeling. We have 2.6 million customers around the world. You can't tell your customers to trust you. It doesn't work that way. For my son, for example, if he's balancing across a beam and he falls off, he's going to be pretty angry with me for a start. But he trusts that I'm going to catch him. That's a learned behavior over years of me catching him and not letting him fall off. Otherwise, he really wouldn't like me. It's the same with companies. So you can be mechanical, you can have all the steps in place, but it is a learned behavior with your customers, which is why trust can diminish so quickly, which is why we're seeing this deficit of trust and erosion of it within corporations, because every time you see a breach, every time you see somebody steal somebody's identity, it just chips away at that trust. And it does affect, to your earlier point, the finances of the company. We can see customer sentiment move if we do something that our customers don't like. Now, it may be as simple as a website change on the journey, but we can track it instantly and we can fix it.
Right. So I'm going to come to questions momentarily. So what are you doing, Stuart? I mean, how does this keep you awake at night? What are the solutions that you're thinking of? I mean, now having defined the problem.
I mean, I would absolutely agree. What keeps me awake at night is breaches, because you have to take the stance that you are constantly under attack. So you do preventative measures as well as detective measures as well. And we do use a number of different techniques to do that. Some of them are AI, some of them are data related. But some of it is just about being very transparent about what we do as well and talking to our customers and being very open with them. So one thing we do is when we have a prospective client, particularly a large institutional client, we bring them onto our premises and we have a physical or several cyber defense operation rooms. We bring them into the room and we explain how we keep their data safe and how we protect them from the environment, and they can see for themselves how it works. So often you see technology, as a cost center, but in reality, it can be a profit center in that respect, because when you bring a customer in and it closes a deal, that's a pretty powerful outcome for the company.
Right, but do you, yeah.
Sorry, there's one more cost. We do phishing attacks on our employees on a regular basis. And let's say 1,000 people get a phishing attack, 8 or 10 or 20 fall for it. When that repeatedly happens with the same individuals, they have a close encounters with the CEO, saying, do you really need to display this stupidity again? Because you don't put in your credentials, you don't give data, and we have to do this constantly because not every individual is alert to the same extent, and you got to raise that alertness. Yet another cost, but it also comes with training and development.
So let me, the question I was going to ask Stuart, and then I'll come to you as well, Harsha, is that, do you feel it's going to get worse? I mean, you know, there was a tattoo which said, trust no one, and is every employee going to put that, maybe not such a deep tattoo, but similar one?
I haven't got the tattoo yet, but who knows? I think the environment's only going to get worse, if I'm honest. The level of attacks are increasing. It's an arms race. You're only really, if you're lucky, you're one step ahead. But you have to keep investing in this area. It's probably one area that we invest more time and more focus over the last few years than we've ever done, because the minute you have a breach, it's something that every CIO, CEO absolutely dreads, because you don't want to be in the papers, you don't want to destroy the confidence of your clients, and it's a very real risk these days.
Ashwin, your clients
actually, so frankly, I think we have to look at it in two ways. See, first is there a willful default from the people who are given the right to own it, right? So you look at it, what's the issue with one part of the trust issue, right? It's not transparent. So when I'm giving my data, and usually the trust is all around data, when I'm giving somebody the data, you don't tell me why you need it, right? So first part of it is, are you transparent about it? Second is, are you accountable to do what you are doing with that data? And one of the classic examples is, people build a lot of models, AI models. AI models have its own biases, and we've heard so many different examples about it, right? So are you being responsible and accountable of what you do with that data? And third part is what I call as sovereignty. It's said many times, data is the new oil or whatever. I think data is today, besides your bank or cash balance, data is probably your second biggest asset. So the question is, do I own it? So I think on the willful side, the constituents who are responsible for this, from government to technology providers like ourselves, and the owners of the technology who consume it, I think all of us have to take the responsibility to ensure that they are addressing this issue. And then second part, of course, what we said a lot about is on the real security side. That's where there is a lot of technology.
No, so in a way, I'm trying to sort of bring out that the real security investments that you do is a manifestation of the fear that you feel. And if that's getting worse, obviously your investments are going to increase. Good news for some people, I'm sure. But if it's going to get worse and worse, then it's obviously going to affect the way you do business. If a bank's, the edifice of a bank is built on trust, and if you lose that, then what do you do? Or how do you do, rather, more importantly?
Yeah, I think we're seeing the beginning of this. You asked, is it going to get worse? I think it's going to continue to get worse. And typically, when you look at history, it has to get really bad for people to wake up and do something. So this thing will continue to evolve downward and then reverse, eventually where the trust audit methodology will come in place.
Okay.
Where really trusted people across nations, across corporations, come in and actually run a trust audit. So I think it's going to get worse. It is a vicious circle right now, but think of the countries that are really involved in breaches. It's bizarre. It's the same countries that come up each and every time. North Korea, what a surprise. Iran, what a surprise. China, what a surprise. Russia, what a surprise. This is repeated. So that's only the beginning. There will be others. And I think the investment that countries are also needing to put in, countries today are trying to defend their defense systems, but they have to get well beyond that to protect each one of us.
Okay. Questions or comments, anyone? Yeah, go ahead. Very short questions, please. Yeah. Or comments.
Okay, my name is Sagar, and user privacy and data is a geopolitical issue. We mentioned North Korea and Russia and all that. We are disintegrating, they are disintegrating this internet into private networks, right? But there is a reason for this. And the reason is that the US government is using the public information to destabilize the governments in different countries. So how do you see this? To every action, there will be an equal and opposite reaction.
Okay. Got it. Someone here? go ahead. I'm going to collect some questions and then, yeah. Dichotomy, yes. Okay, yes, please.
I'm Damodaran from Amix. Actually, when you talk about various different certifications and all that to build the trust for the customers, everybody, how do SMEs deal with it, right? Like, because you have this GDPR, HIPAA, ISO, and all these different things. Large organizations can afford to invest in it and get those certifications to build the trust. But how do SMEs, especially these different countries having different ones?
Got it. Anyone else on this side? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have seen the history of the likes of Cambridge Analytica, who have used data which was at that point in time trusted and voluntarily submitted to somebody like Facebook. So do you foresee a repeat of that kind of episode? Probably it is happening right now here and right here, but do you see that getting prevented, or do you see that becoming a way of life?
Yes, ma'am. I think you're. Sorry, just repeat that, yeah.
Our digital duplicates are out there already. The damage is already done. Social network payment, whatever you call it, we are out there. It is irreversible. What can be done about it now?
Okay. And you don't trust this, and you don't trust anyone or any.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Anyone else? No. Okay. We're running out of time. So let me give you a quick sum up as well. There are 2 or 3 questions. One is, what's happening from North Korea or China is an equal and opposite reaction to what the United States is doing. The second is the dichotomy between trust and technology, which will obviously grow. The other question, which I think we should address, is that of small and medium enterprises. What do they do? Because they don't have the big budgets to invest in defense systems. And the Cambridge Analytica question, which I love, and I could spend half an hour talking about it, but I'll leave it to you. Anyone who wants to pick up? Stuart, you want to go first, and then we'll come back.
I can certainly start with the technology, the conflict between pace and protection, if you like. It's an interesting one. And cloud is I can't tell you how many hours we spent talking about cloud in our company, particularly with the boards. What's really interesting, actually, is of the breaches that you've seen, it's not the cloud providers that are at fault. It's how you configure the cloud that's at fault. So a lot of the onus rests on the individuals and the companies and corporations as to how they go into the cloud. The risk is you don't go that direction, you're missing out on a whole bunch of opportunities. So, you can't just lift and shift. And I think most people have probably heard that now. You have to make a conscious effort to go in. But really, the drive is around the speed and pace and keeping up with the demand. And cloud is a really good mechanism to do that, but it doesn't solve all the questions. So I think if it's done in a very considered way, and if you configure the environment in the right way, sometimes it can even be more secure than your on-premise. And if you think about history, right, so corporations, they used to build data centers with a big wall around it. That was your protection. And then you shielded yourself from the outside world. That's going or gone now. So now you're using SaaS providers, you're putting things in the cloud. That wall is gone, but it's a different series of protections. And it comes back to the other gentleman's point about skill sets, competencies, how you get that continuous learning and training. So it's actually, there's lots of additional roles that you need in a corporation to balance that.
Okay,
And just
Ashwin, and then we've got exactly a minute to go. Yeah, Ashwin.
Just quick one, and I think don't look at today's cost of the technology investments as well as some of the time it takes, because a lot of statistics which are quoted demonstrate that if you build your technology right today, it will create much long-term shareholder value for your business. So yes, there is some additional cost today, but you invest now, even if you are an SMB, you will get the returns in the long term. That's what the customers will trust. You have a data breach, you have lost your customers forever.
Okay, Harsha,
So
last
two
word.
things on the small and medium enterprises. I was meeting with an analytics company just before coming up here. They do a lot of research and analytics for large companies around the world, and guess what they do? They do it inside the client's environment. So they don't invest much of anything in security. That's how SME can bypass the big investment. The equal and opposite reaction, here's what I will say, is just a quick example. World War II, if Germany had had a straightforward fight with the Western powers, it would have lost every day. So they went evil in their approach. What is happening now is exactly similar. I will not play fair with you because I don't have your creativity or resources. So guess what? The United States is gearing up like the rest of the Western world. They will fight this menace and put it away just like the last time.
Right, thank you so much. We've run out of time completely. The Cambridge Analytica question, my understanding is it's already happening. 2020 elections are going to be far more interesting than we think it is for all the wrong reasons. Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you so much, Govind, for moderating that wonderfully. I'm going to request you to hand over tokens of our appreciation to all of our panelists. So Ernst Hemingway said that the best way to find out if you can trust someone is to trust them. Can we or can we not? I think that's what was deliberated. So many angles, social media companies to be disqualified for test audits, the fact that trust is not audited or certified currently,